Welcome to the Elemental Shaman class changes guide. Let's start by giving the Fist of Raw Den, which was empowered by the mighty titan Amen Thul, and diffuse it at its new home in the Maelstrom. So first things first, we're going to look at the artifact weapon and the artifact abilities that have been removed, renamed, and a couple that have been reworked in the new talent system for Battle for Azeroth. First up, let's go over the artifact traits that have been removed, starting with all damage percentage increased bonuses. Call the Thunder, increase nature damage by 1% each trait, total of 4%. Earthen Attunement increases damage dealt by Earthshock by 4%, total of 16%. Firestorm increases damage dealt by Flameshock by 8%, total of 32%. The Ground increases damage by Earthquake by 5%, total of 20%. These numbers are calculated with the 4 points in each trait, of course at artifact weapon level 75. Losing 32% damage to Flameshock will be quite noticeable at the start of Battle for Azeroth. Lava Imbued increased damage by Lava Burst by 3%, total of 12%. Molten Blast increases the critical strike damage dealt by Lava Burst by 2%, total of 8%. Elemental Destabilization increase the effectiveness of Elemental Fury by 5%, total of 20%. For some people who are not familiar with this passive buff, so in World of Warcraft when you crit, it's 200% damage. Elemental Fury is a baseline of 250%, so with the 4 traits, it's actually up to 270%. A lot of numbers to wiggle around, but it's a pretty solid passive for Ele Shaman. Master of the Elements increases damage dealt by Elemental Overload by 12%. Elemental Overload is the mastery for Ele Shaman, so this was pretty nice to have a little extra damage there. Surge of Power increased damage dealt by Lightning Bolt by 15%. No extra traits on that one, unfortunately. Electric Discharge increased damage of Chain Lightning by 5% for a total of 20%. If you can get your hands on some Chain Lightning relics, you can get up to 35% for some Mythic Plus action. Power of the Earthen Ring increased damage and stamina by 10%. Stormkeeper's Power increases all damage by 5%. This was the original last point of the artifact weapon before the Broken Shore questline. I used to call that grind the Maw 9. After all these years, it's still awesome to push that Bloodlust. Come on now, come on Blizzard. Ogre Shamans, allied races, let's go. Onto the Golden Artifact traits, which were new and unique to all classes. Fury of the Storms. When you would use Stormkeeper, your artifact ability, it would spawn a lightning elemental that would attack your target for 8 seconds. Seismic Storm. Earthquake would have a 5% chance to deal extra damage. On ad fights or Mythic Plus, it was noticeable. Since you don't commonly use Earthquake on a single target encounter, it was not utilized properly. Volcanic Inferno. Lava Burst had a chance to put a volcanic plume under the target that did extra damage to all enemies in the plume's radius. Power of the Maelstrom. This would allow Lava Burst to give you a 3 stack of Lightning Overload. Again, Overload is the mastery for Elemental Shaman, which will allow a free duplicate of that spell. So basically, you got 3 free Lightning Bolt Overloads after a Lava Burst. Pretty nice. This was a very solid golden trait. Tough to lose 4 major kind of passives from your playstyle. It's possible maybe we might see one of these golden traits mixed into the Azerite Armor in the future. There were a few passive buffs that were also in the weapon being removed. 2 of them added a significant difference to the playstyle. So let's take a look. First we have Swelling Maelstrom. This trait increased your maximum Maelstrom by 25 and bumped the max cost of Earthshock by 25. This trait synergized with a Tier 21 set bonus. You would Lava Burst to get the Earthshock bonus, Earthshock at 100 Maelstrom, Earthquake, which would drop your Maelstrom down to 90, Lava Burst to get the Earthshock bonus again, and repeat. Protection of the Elements increases the healing done by Healing Surge by 15%. Not the most amazing trait, but it did help to top yourself off after a couple of heals. Elementalist. Here we have another strong passive, which will allow you to reduce the time remaining on your cooldown of your Fire Elemental or Storm Elemental whenever you cast Lava Burst. With tier sets being removed, it will be interesting to see how talents will synergize with Azerite Armor. Looking at the artifact talent tree, we're going to mark all the traits that are being removed going into battle for Azeroth. I understand what the dev team is doing by removing the abilities from your artifact weapons, because as they said, they don't want to have these abilities stacking up after expansion and expansion. I think they could have just kept some of the major traits, just reduce the effectiveness. So I guess the argument would come up, do you put them as talents or as passives? It's a risk they took building a whole new type of talent system with the artifact weapon. There are still no details on what the Heart of Azeroth will have. Maybe an artifact type trait system, or they just want to give you a clear path to choose for your class, rather than selecting talents all over the place. This Makhar Orc is definitely not pleased with what's going on. But hey, at least he probably has a ton of Hala battle tokens. So looking at the artifact tree, there are 3 traits that are not crossed out. Let's go ahead and take a look to see how they are converted. Artifact traits converted to talent points, so they did find a way to sneak a couple in. First, we have Shamanistic Healing from the artifact weapon, which is now the talent Nature's Guardian on Battle for Azeroth. When you drop below 35%, you are healed for 20% of your maximum HP. Of course, the fine print cannot occur every 45 seconds, compared to previously, which was 30 seconds. Static Overload and Stormkeeper. Static Overload, which gave you those free lightning duplicates after using Stormkeeper, and of course, you can't leave out Stormkeeper, the main artifact ability which gave you 3 free casts of Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning. Stormkeeper is now only 2 charges with no damage boost. Static Overload is now high voltage with chance on cast. Speaking of talents, as you can see, the 2 talent trees side by side. There are significant changes done from Legion going into Battle for Azeroth. We have talents going from rows 90 and 75 down to row 15, a talent from row 90 down to row 60, talents that have been removed, talents that were added. I saw something recently that reminded me of what this looks like. So I hope I can smoothen it out for you and give you a good in-depth explanation. Let's look at the returning talent and ability coming back in BfA. 2 long-awaited friends have returned for Elemental Shaman. First, we welcome back the Mighty Earth Shield. Adds 10% extra of your healing to the target, and when the Earth Shield to target takes damage, there are 9 charges of heals from the shield itself based off of 25% of the Shaman's spell power. Good old Poop Shield. One of my favorite totems makes its way back into the Elemental Shaman spellbook. Tremor Totem is back. So let's head over and take a look at the new talent tree. Starting with row 15, 1 new talent and 2 familiar talents. The new talent is called Exposed Elements. Earthshock now increases your next lightning bolt by 200%. Echo of Elements still gives you that 2 charges of Lava Burst, and Elemental Blast also has the same effect, giving you a random buff to one of your secondary stats. Looking at row 30 now, 1 new talent has been added here. Aftershock still refunds 30% of your Maelstrom, except it's on chance now compared to always refunding. Master of the Elements is actually the Tier 21 2-piece bonus, just rewarded all nature or frost spells by 20%. No change in totem mastery, all totem buffs are the exact same. Row 45, a very interesting row. We have a movement speed with a damage reducer bonus, a healing buff, and a cooldown reducer to a stun. Spirit Wolf allows you to gain 5% movement speed and 5% damage reduction every second, stacking up to 4 times. Of course, Earth Shield, 10% of your extra healing to the target, 9 charges of heals from the shield itself based off of 25% of Shaman spell power. Static Charge reduces the cooldown of Capacitor Totem by 5 seconds for each enemy up to a maximum of 20 seconds. Row 60, the new talent High Voltage can now cause your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning with a second Elemental Overload. Storm Elemental, which replaces your Fire Elemental, builds a stack of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning cast reduction by 3%, stacking up to 20 times. Liquid Magma Totem has no change from Legion, just a reduction of spell power damage. Looking at row 75, we have 2 healing talents and 1 speed movement talent. Nature's Guardian, which I mentioned earlier, was an artifact trait, Shamanistic Healing. Nature's Guardian will heal you for 20% of your maximum HP when you are brought below 35%. Ancestral Guidance is the same as Legion. Last on this row is Windrush Totem, granting all allies who are within 10 yards of Totem to gain 60% movement speed for 5 seconds. Row 90. All 3 of these talents are from Legion. Earthen Rage. Your damaging spells will incite the earth to attack your target for 6 seconds. Primal Elementalist. Your earth, fire, and storm elementals are 80% more powerful, and you gain control of their abilities. Ice Fury is the same ability, just have been nerfed significantly. Huge damage reductions compared to previous, and now only generates 15 Maelstrom compared to 24. Row 100, the Power Row. Speaking of power, unlimited power. When you get Elemental Overload, you gain 2% haste for 10 seconds. Does not refresh the duration on a new stack. Stormkeeper, 2 charges of free Elemental Overload on Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning. Ascendance, removes the cooldown of Lava Burst and increases the damage of Lava Burst by an equal amount to your critical strike chance. Let's quickly take an early look at the new Azerite Armor talents. Currently I only have the shoulders and helmet on beta. First, let's look at the helmet. This is the talent that seems really strong for leveling. It's called Champion of Azeroth. When you contribute to the death of an enemy, you get a free heal and a versatility buff. It does stack up to 2 times. The other talents in the first row are somewhat good, but I definitely can see them being used in endgame. On the second row, I use Resounding Protector, which has the same concept as Pride has. The other talent on row 2 is a speed increase after getting a killing blow. Looking at the shoulder talents, Volcanic Lightning is a very similar concept to the legendary belt from Legion. So when you lightning bolt a mob, it places a debuff on the target, and when you hit that target with a lava burst, it adds some extra damage. You can tell it's an early concept, but at least you won't have to wait for that proper legendary to actually take advantage of your class and spec. So the last part of our journey, I'm going to explain which talents I think will have best priority for questing and some other situations. Row 15. With exposed elements, you don't have that many chances to use Earthshock much while leveling. Echo of Elements, so with the increased percentage of Lava Surge, you will see more procs, but sometimes having the extra Lava Burst to cast is a nice filler. All choices are viable, just Elemental Blast is a smoother opener and you get the extra stat bonus. Row 30. With Flame Shock having a set duration and not costing Maelstrom anymore, Aftershock may be a really situational rather than strong choice like in Legion. Master of the Elements could really be nice when the Descendants build. Totem Mastery just offers way too much overall, not to mention, Shaman's been dropping them totems since day 1, man. Row 45. So we have a movement speed booster, a heal, and a stun reducer. The Spirit Wolf. Sorry, still in character. I use this while group leveling sometimes. Using the pre-made gear to level has been kind of rough, so I need the Earthshield up at all times solo questing. Static Charge is a very strong choice for dungeons, reducing that cap totem CD. Optimal choice, gotta go with the Poop Shield. Row 60. Looking at High Voltage, which was a passive artifact ability in Legion, just doesn't have a stronger feel in this row. Should be on row 15 in my opinion. Really comes down to Storm Elemental and Magma Totem. Storm Elemental has a 2.5 minute CD, but strong single target and AoE with the Chain Lightning stacking buff. Magma Totem always strong on big pulls. Row 75. Nature's Guardian, as you saw early in the video, did literally nothing. Should be a passive, not a talent in my opinion. Then there's Ancestral Guidance and Gust of... oh, right. Windrush Totem, the only extra move speed button. So obvious choice here, it's pretty much a 1 talent row. Row 90. Earthen Rage can be solid for single target builds. Primal Elementalist makes your Earth Elemental a monster, makes it easy for those elite quests, and when you overpull, he's your personal 5-minute tank CD. Ice Fury. As I mentioned earlier, it has been nerfed significantly in damage, lower Maelstrom generation, and Frost Shock bonus damage. Doesn't mean at all Ice Fury is super weak in this row. I can see this still being used on certain builds. Row 100, so one interesting passive and two strong abilities. I'm not going to choose a favorite because all of these are really quite good, but this is definitely the power row indeed. Unlimited power is actually quite good, but by the time you get to 4 stacks, it's gone and you have to start it up again. With a ton of mastery in the future, you can possibly see close to 100% uptime. Has a feel like the metronome trinket from the Nighthold. Always gotta love stacking haste abilities. Stormkeeper, of course, was your main artifact ability. Has great synergy with high voltage for that quick burst, and even with Storm Elemental to get your lightning bolt and chain lightning stacks up, not to mention quick maelstrom generation to throw out some earthquakes. With only 1 minute CD, I think Stormkeeper is very fun to use. Last but not least, Ascendance, turning into a lava burst turret and going full Ignatius. Shout out to Ignatius from Cataclysm. Not a common talent for questing, unless that opposite faction comes around and you just want to blow them up. Very large cooldown, can always pop a tome, retalent to kill a rare mob. I just really like Stormkeeper. Kinda bummed it's the same talent row as Ignatius mode though. All in all, row 100 will always be a tough choice throughout the expansion, unless of course changes are made. Everybody has their own playstyle and what they enjoy about certain class and specs. These were just my opinions on the new Elemental Shaman tree. So my final thoughts, overall, Elemental Shaman is still very fun. I'm almost 117 on beta. It's very enjoyable. Damage feels good, especially for having that pre-made gear even. Ellie still has that monster dungeon trash damage with Chain Lightning Earthquake combo. With slower Maelstrom generations and 6-second cooldowns on Flame Shock, it does add a slightly different feel to it. I'm sure as the gear progresses, Elemental Shaman will put out some solid damage and has some nice utility. Thanks for watching my Elemental Shaman class changes guide for Battle for Azeroth. Had a shockingly great time trying to bring you a nice visual class guide, rather than just staring at a target dummy for 47 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please hit that like button, subscribe for the support, and to stay up to date. With beta now in full swing, look for more guides, and also tons of World of Warcraft expansion changes coming out. Comment down below if you have any question about this guide or any Warcraft topic. Really appreciate all the support, everyone. Thanks for watching the World of Amtrak.